Hello. This is a re-recording. My last one got corrupted, so I'm just making it again. Um, Basically, this is just preparation for our match against Baraka in the eighth round. I did some checking. Again, I couldn't find his chess.com or chess, but what I did find is that I found one of his games that he played this very tournament, and in this tournament he played the modern, which goes like this. Um, Bishop c4, and his opponent played like this, and he played this c5 line. I had made a line on this thing, but it just got corrupted, so I couldn't show it. This is just a re-recording. But basically, what you'll see is that when he plays this variation, and you play like d5, for example, it's very similar to um the Sicilian dragon. Very similar, right? So if we just turn on Stockfish, just as an example here, we can very much just play f4, for example. And if you can opt to take, just as an example, and if he plays something like this, well, we just defend, right? And if he doesn't, if he takes, decides to take, and he just expands like this, queen f5, f3, we can sort of just play our Sicilian dragon almost, right? Almost like a Sicilian dragon. Because like in our Sicilian dragon, traditionally after e4 would play like knight c3 and then f4 and then knight f3. That's how we'd play. But he'll only play c5. He'll only play c5 if you play d4. So he's going to play e4. If you're going to play e4, he's going to play g6, d4, bishop g7. If you play knight f3, for example, then he'll play c5. And here you can take this pawn. There's nothing preventing you from taking this pawn. But if you take the pawn, it's just you're not going to keep it because like check, takes, and then take it back. So this opening is not a terrible opening, but it's just like it's not the best for him. It's interesting because it's you know a bit dynamic. But I recommend what we do is we just play this almost like an Italian. Because after c4, if you just push, he will play this like, for example, knight f3, knight f6. We just play knight c3, castles. We can even play e5 here if he's not careful. Before castles, he'll probably play d6. And if he plays d6, we play bishop c4, castles, castles, for example. If he just does something like this, we just trade. If he doesn't develop his bishop and needs to place his pawn break, which is his main pawn break in the position, actually, it's e6. He'll play e6 at some point. And if he doesn't play e6, he'll play something like a6, b5. And in order to prevent b5, you have to play a4. So you can play a4 anytime, even as like a waiting move. Like let's say if you just play something like here, you can play a4. You see, that's the best move in the position. A4 is a necessary move in this kind of structure. So I recommend we go for this. So like if he after e4, g6, d4, bishop g7, we can go for knight f3, then c5, and then c5 we push. He'll play something else like knight here. We just play our normal Italian almost. This is a structure. This is a type of game we can opt for. Um, he'll play something like that. If he plays e6 again, bishop f4, take with the knight, and you just control a large center. And you know, eventually you can play a lot of moves here. Most moves are good here. You can just play bishop here. I think the rest of it's pretty logical. Well, not that. The rest of this is pretty logical. You can play something like c3. You can play bishop g5, or you can you know, take, just simply take, which is the best. And takes, you just win a pawn, right? And even though you may think, oh, I win a pawn back, no, you don't. Oh, but I do know you don't. There's this tactic. So he can't take this pawn as well. And if he does take that pawn, you know, you should spot this. You should spot this 10 times out of 10. And takes, even though he may like win a rook back. I mean, you're up a queen, right? You can't really lose this, which you won't do, but I'm just mentioning it. I recommend you just play this like an Italian. Um, don't take, even though technically you can, the computer will say it's the best move, but it's just a lot more theory and stuff, and it's a bit unnecessary, and you deviate from your traditional game plans. I'd say we just go with d5. And if you just go with d5, he'll play d6, and if he doesn't play d6, the only other move he may potentially play is e6 straight away. And this is a terrible move, but he might play it, and I don't want you to take. Right? Even though you can, the best move is just check. He'll have to play like f6 here, and then you just move back, and then now his position sucks. So the main move he'll play is d6 or knight here, and then it literally just becomes a Sicilian, and you just play it like, and you're Italian. It's very very easy. Um, Eventually, at some point, you play a4. You kick out this bishop or trade it off. If he moves here, you can just castle, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But there'll always be this move that you want to try and prevent, so you play something like this. Um, and then one of the reasons we have the bishop here on c4 is to use this long diagonal on the king. Um, and yeah, this pawn is a bit weak in the long run, so we can potentially do things like that. Other than that, other tactics, if you don't trade it, there's obviously the same old tactics of like, okay, after castles, just as an example, let's say he just plays 98. Um, you have your traditional tactics of, okay, you go here, and let's say he just burns a move, right? You can just play queen here, and then, just do your traditional trading off nonsense. Like you just do this, trade off the bishop, because again, just like the Sicilian, it's just a very strong bishop that you just want to get rid of. So there's a lot of other tactics that you can have. I'd say in general, main game plan that we can opt for is play it like a Sicilian. If he plays d4, we push. If he plays c4, we push. D6. You can opt for c4 if you want to, or even knight c3. Either is good. But I recommend knight c3 just so that we can play our traditional Italian setup, and we don't really have to change much. Then you see bishop c4, castles, castles. If he plays here and you just push the h pawn, you don't have to keep that bishop there. If he brings the knight here, his goal of bringing the knight here is to play knight e5, and when he plays knight e5, it trades off your piece, so you don't really want that. So you play something like this. If he plays knight e5 anyway, you just move back. Just as an example, if instead of that he plays something like a6, you want to play a4, because the whole idea of a6 is to play b5 and just decrease your mobility in the position. You don't want that. You play a4 preemptively. Then you have something like knight d7, queen here. You can opt for many things, or even just like previously, as I mentioned before, you can opt for your exchanging of this bishop. And then it's just a very normal game where you have a decent space, where you have a very nice center, you have a good space advantage. Here it's saying you can play f4. I say you just do something like this, and then after takes, now you can play f4, and you just have a very nice center. You eventually have this e5 pawn break. He can never play e6, because if he plays e6, you just take, and you win this pawn. And that's why this bishop on c4 is a very long-term idea that's quite good. He played one game with this, and that one game that he played quite poorly, to be honest. Well, I shouldn't say that. It was a relatively equal game for the most part. However, um, it, he sort of messed it up by just playing poorly in the end game. So I feel like if you just get a decent position in the middle game and opening just from this, you should be just from this opening, you should be okay. So just once again, to just reiterate, just very very quickly, we decide to play e4, g6. We play d4, bishop here, knight here, c pawn push, knight out. If he plays knight out, we play e5. He moves knight here, we just move our knight here as well. This is a nice other variation, which is unlikely, but it's just a nice one. Here it takes, and then you play f4 and you trap the knight. It's a very this is a very unlikely position to happen, but just showing you this variation just to look at. other line, if he doesn't play knight, if he doesn't play knight out, which he probably won't, he play d6. And if d6, just same as normal, same old Italian, just the same ideas as before, right? Castles, castles, bishop out, h3. If he doesn't take and he just goes back, for example, you play a4 to prevent b5. You eventually move out your own bishop. Like if he plays e6 here, um, don't take at this point because he can take with a bishop, and then if you just trade everything, he has a good center. Um, Play bishop f4 here because now if he decides to take, you take with a knight, and you just have a great position. If you don't, you play, and he plays fe5. The center is locked forever, and you can just attack his king side, and you are living the life. This is a very nice position for you. You just win a piece, or win a pawn maybe, or he has to just spend his entire time defending. You can play, even in this kind of position, you can play ultra aggressively. You can play king h1, g4, f4, and that kind of thing. So I think your ideas are very clear in this opening. He will play g6. I'm almost 100% certain of it because he's already played at the same tournament, and people very rarely change their openings in the middle of the tournament. He'll likely play g6. And any other opening, you know what to do. Against the Caro-Kann, you really played well. I'll be honest, I'm glad you remembered most of our lines that we prepared against the Caro-Kann in the exchange variation. He won't play the Scandinavian. If he goes with e4, e5, that's great. You know what to do in your Italian game. If he plays the Sicilian, just the plain old Sicilian, you can opt for your Grand Prix. Yeah, but he's likely to just play the modern defense. And if he opts for the modern defense, I say, uh, just go with the flow of your Italian. That's all I have to say. Good luck. You got this. All right. Bye bye.